Thanks for tuning in to Vitality and Motion. Let this be a place to grow your mindset and prioritize movement. All audio is original with music and production support from Riverside as my editing platform. This podcast is for education and inspiration only, and any studies or products I mention are simply for context. Take what fits in your life and check in with your healthcare medical providers as you feel is necessary. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Vitality in Motion. I'm your host Maddie, and this week we actually have a repeating guest on, my boyfriend Jake. He's back on the pod by popular demand, and today we're going to be talking about HRV or heart rate variability and sleep, so we definitely have some good information to share with y'all today.
Hey, what's up, guys? Glad to be back. Going to be talking about sleep, like Maddie said. We're doing total opposites, going from caffeine first episode to sleep the second episode. So definitely two different ends of the spectrum, but excited to be here and excited to be on season 2.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's go ahead and get the ball rolling. So the first question we're just going to start out with is what is HRV or heart rate variability, and then why it's so important for recovery and easiest to measure at night. So Jake, take it away.
Cool. So HRV stands for heart rate variability, and this basically describes like the time variations between heartbeats. Everyone's is different, so sometimes there's a tiny bit more time between beats, and then other times there's a little bit less. So the change in that heart rate is called heart rate variability, and this is really important for recovery. And I think that's kind of why we wanted to do an episode on it, because we were just interested in it after, we do our workouts and things like that. So if you have a high HRV, that means your body is recovering pretty well, and you're relaxing easier, which in turn helps your muscles repair faster. But if you have a low HRV, that means that your body doesn't really recover as quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Good summary there. I actually found a study titled "The Difference Between Daytime and Nighttime Heart Rate Variability May Usefully Predict the Apnea Hypapnea, I always butcher that word, index in patients with obstructive sleep apnea, and it found that your heart rate's natural rhythm should change between day and night, and when that nighttime shift is smaller than expected, it can be a sign that sleep isn't as restorative. So, as he was saying, at night HRV should be higher than during the day, and then that reflects the parasympathetic nervous system kind of promoting that relaxation. And so when the nighttime rise is blunted or absent, it can signal poor sleep quality or conditions like sleep apnea, and that your heart rate isn't settling down at night when your sleep routine may not be essentially doing its job. So,
And I saw that it's better to track it at night because obviously during the day, your body's just doing so many different things. So it makes your heart rate speed up and then it'll slow down and it just changes all throughout the day. So that's why it's super important to track it at night.
yeah, nighttime is going to be, like you
Yeah.
said, the best way to measure it. So then our next question that we're going to kind of discuss is what is the quote unquote optimal value and how accurate are these fitness trackers tracking HRV?
So from the research I did, a lot of the things that I looked at basically said that everybody's different. So to say there's an optimal number for everybody would be difficult. So it's not like a one size fits all type of thing. But what I read about was that you really want to pay attention to consistency. So like for example, if your HRV is, I don't know, an average of like 60, and it drops to 59 or 58, then that means you're basically recovering at the rate that you should be. But if your average HRV is 60 and it drops to say 35, then that means your body's not recovering like it should. So I try to make sure that I'm paying attention to, especially what I'm doing in the gym, because that's probably what affects it the most. So I thought that was interesting that there's no, exact value for everybody. Everybody's different. So just making sure to look for consistency, I think, is important.
I did look at Aura, Whoop, Apple Watch, and Garmin HRV. There was like some study or some site, I'll link it in my show notes, that was talking about the average in milliseconds for individuals. And so for a lower value, they said on average it's about less than 30 milliseconds. On average, most people may be around 30 to 60 milliseconds, and then a higher HRV may be closer to 60 to 100 milliseconds. So kind of somewhere within those ranges is where you should expect your HRV to be. So the more you wear your device all the time, it's going to be more consistent. So I actually looked at my HRV on my Aura, which as I do all the time. But according to my Aura ring, my average is around 39. but there are days when it's lower at 24, and so it really just depends. And I think our bodies crave consistency and routine, especially when it comes to sleep and activity. So I think it's a good way to measure, like, is your body recovering well? Do you need to take a day off from exercises, whatever the case might be. And it seems like fitness trackers are really the only true way to measure HRV. I think the most accurate way to measure is going to be with a Holter monitor. So basically, it's like a band that sits kind of right at your chest line. I did find a brand that is pretty similar to like a clinical grade or clinical standard monitor, and I'll link that in the show notes as well if you are interested and maybe you're an avid runner or something and you want to check it more frequently. But yeah, and it seems to have pretty good reviews. So I thought that was pretty cool. And
I'll,
it seems to be more accurate if you wear it at your chest versus like on your finger or your watch. So
yeah. I'll also say too, my Fitbit's a little bit different, I think, from Apple Watches and other sort of fitness trackers that you can use. So for my Fitbit, it actually gives me what's called a daily readiness score. And so that score is a combination of my HRV, believe it's my sleep score, and then there's one other value. So score. So it just depends on what fitness tracker you have. So unfortunately for me, for my Fitbit, I can't actually look at only my HRV value. I can only look at my daily readiness value. So it really just depends on what you have. That's why I've actually thought about getting something else.
yeah, definitely that's good info for our Fitbit users out there.
Yeah.
So transitioning to our next question we're going to discuss is if someone is getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, they're still, getting their normal sleep, but wake up exhausted, what is that telling us?
So there can be a couple different factors. I did a good amount of research on this actually before we even said we were going to do this episode because there was a point in time, especially during this school year, where I felt like I was going to bed at a good time and I'd get up in my regular 6 a.m. So I'd get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, but I would just always wake up so tired. And there's a couple different factors that could be affecting it. So first could be you're not getting enough deep sleep. Most of the night you're either awake or you're in sort of like a light sleep stage, or you wake up every hour. So I looked up some things that could help out with that. And the first thing that I saw that I feel like a lot of people struggle with nowadays is reducing screen time before bed. During that point in time, I would always either be watching TV or scrolling on my phone, and then I would just put my phone down and immediately go to bed. Another factor that I thought was interesting that I don't really do this all the time, but sometimes it happens that if you eat too close to bed, it can sort of keep you up throughout the night. I've experienced like cases of heartburn, which wakes me up in the middle of the night. I've woken up with a really, dry mouth because I'm dehydrated. So I make sure so I'm glad I have my Awala now. So I can drink a lot of water throughout the day. Of course, stress and anxiety can disrupt your sleep as well. So I think doing things before bed to keep you relaxed. Me and Maddie have really tried to start reading before bed. I ordered like 6 books on Amazon to make sure that I have a book at all times. So just making sure to do things before bed, I think that's just gets you in a relaxed mode, because anything with a screen is just gonna it's going to keep your mind racing even when you turn the TV off or put your phone down. So I think that's super important.
hmm Yeah, definitely. And I was looking at State Vincent Medical Center, and they were saying you're still sleeping, obviously, but you're maybe not going through a full cycle of sleep. So, like Jake was saying, it's affected by multiple different things, stress, caffeine intake, especially closer to bedtime. And I honestly think that's why, or it could even be something like, noises that you're hearing at night. So I think that's why we both love our box fan so much. Almost like a qualification factor when I was dating, like I need someone else who can sleep with a box fan. So Jake checked that box. Doo-doo-doo. Oh, and another thing that actually it talks about is that if you have sleep apnea, there may be times where you're not breathing efficiently, essentially with sleep apnea, and that might be where a sleep study might be useful to see exactly what's going on because you're not really aware of certain habits that you do when you're sleeping because you're asleep. But I would say realistically, you also want to try to go to sleep within around the same window every night. I would say within like a 1 to 2 hour window, which would be beneficial for your circadian rhythm. People always talk about your natural alarm clock, and we all have like a typical time we like to wake up at. And so I feel like for me, mine is normally around like 6 to 7 o'clock. My body's ready to get up. And after I fall back asleep, I feel like it's really hard to get up. So it's almost like just get up naturally when your body is telling you to get up. Now, obviously, when you're working and stuff, you can't really control that. So keeping it in that 2 hour window. Yeah, anything else you want to add before we move on?
That's pretty much it. I mean, I'd say really, I mean, I talked about reading before bed, but I think anything that can sort of get you in like a relaxed mode. Like we're gonna talk about meditation in just a second, but just trying different things too, I think is a big thing that a lot of people just don't do. They sort of are like, why am I not getting good sleep, or why is it so hard for me to fall asleep? Well, you got to try things to try to get yourself in that relaxed state because that's where you get the best sleep. I think that's super important.
Yeah, for sure. You have to try things. You have to see what works for you and what doesn't.
Yeah.
So, the next thing that we're going to talk about is what different lifestyle factors may strongly impact nighttime HRV. We kind of threw around the idea of stress, alcohol, training in the gym time, other stuff. So, what do you got, Jake?
So there's many different factors that can impact your nighttime HRV. It really just varies based on your lifestyle. Exercise definitely plays a big role, especially if you go to the gym regularly. That's why I think for me, I pay attention to that more than anything. I've noticed whenever I push myself in the gym harder or have like a longer workout, my HRV tends to be on the lower side. So I think just sort of planning for that, if you know that you're going to be in the gym and you're going to be pushing yourself harder, just to maybe go to bed a little bit earlier or try to relax earlier before you go to bed. Or,
Diet and nutrition is going to be a huge thing too, making sure you're fueling your
yeah,
workout. If you
yeah,
are training for like endurance running, make sure that you're eating enough calories.
for sure. And that's another thing that I think was disrupting it as well is that I would burn so many calories through running or whatever I was doing at the gym, and then I wouldn't have the proper nutrition after. So I think that's what took my body a little bit longer to recover. So that is definitely something that you need to pay attention to if you're going to train hard in the gym.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's something we take for granted. We think we're eating enough and we're actually not, or you could be on the other spectrum where you're eating too much. It really depends what you got going on. But some other things besides just gym training could actually be like super spicy foods that may give you heartburn. And again, that can just lead to disrupted sleep. Aqua, Alcohol actually inhibits your growth hormone. So when you're sleeping, it may help you to fall asleep, but in fragments. So you're not really truly getting into that deep sleep that your body needs
Yeah.
for recovery. And another one is just dehydration before bed. So it's best to stop eating about 2 to 3 hours, drink a glass of water before bed, have a glass of water so that when you wake up in the morning, you can drink that first thing as well to get things flowing. Yeah, those are also good tips that you can think about.
If I wake up in the middle of the night and I drink all of the water in my wallet, that is usually a problem. so, so yeah, I definitely noticed that for sure.
And that way also will help to hit your water goal, drinking all your fluids. That'll make a difference as well. We did want to get into a little bit about if breath work helps, nervous system regulation, or things like meditation. Can they help to affect your HRV in recovery at night?
Yeah, so I look to a guy. This is a guy named Andrew Huberman. I feel like a lot of people know who he is. He's a famous neuroscientist that has a podcast, which I've listened to a couple episodes by him, and he focuses on how the brain and body control one's behavior and the perception of the world. I've heard him talk about meditation a couple different times, and there's a lot of benefits to it. So it can lead to long-term changes in mood, reducing your anxiety and depression, increases your ability to focus, relaxation, and all of those things put together 100% improves your sleep. So I personally have only tried meditation a couple of times. It sort of just gives you that time to decompress and just totally empty your mind from all the things that you're doing every day. So if you're not a huge reader before bed, I think taking some time to maybe do some sort of meditation or just relaxing your mind in a really quiet space is good for anything, not just sleep, but just if you have any type of depression, anxiety, or anything like that, that's always going to be positive for that.
Yeah, definitely. Just like Jake was saying, building off of the meditation, just taking deep breaths because a lot of the times we don't throughout our day. So just taking time to be mindful and take deep breaths or what we call 360 breaths, where you're really trying to expand the rib cage. I could link a video as well, kind of demonstrating that. I think those are all great, along with a meditation, to just kind of help your body and your mind relax. And you don't have to meditate before bed. You can meditate really anytime. You can do it multiple times. There's different kinds of meditation, which is interesting. And the Huberman Lab podcast, which I'll link in my show notes, he talks about in one episode how there's like an internal focus meditation and an external focus meditation. So based off of what your goals are, you can kind of tailor it to your needs. You really only have to do it for maybe like 5 to 10 minutes a day, or he also suggests like if you're maybe more of like a once a week person, you do it for like 30 minutes like on a Sunday or whatever. So definitely good.
Yeah. Yeah, when we did the meditation a couple months ago, we went outside in the grass with no socks or shoes on, so we were touching the grass and
Grounded.
yeah, and yeah, very grounded and the wind was blowing on the trees and the leaves were rustling, so yeah, it was a good experience actually. I'm surprised we didn't do it more after that.
Well, I mean, I do it most nights.
Well,
I don't know
yeah,
where
you
you've been
you
at.
do it. We just haven't done it together lately. I
Yeah,
am
that's true.
guilty. I have not done it that many times after that. So I'll have to jump on. I gotta practice what I preach.
It's easier said than done, but I
Yeah.
definitely think once you start to make it a habit, it just becomes something that you almost look forward to at night. Like
Hmm.
Jake said, whether that's reading or meditating, or maybe I like to color sometimes, so just
Yeah.
changing it up. And then that kind of jumps into a little bit about, well, I guess before we move on, do we want to talk about naps a little bit and how if that can affect your HRV or nighttime recovery?
Yeah. So from what I researched, any type of rest can positively affect your HRV because that just gives your body time to recover. That can be in the form of a nap or just sleep in general at night. In college, I pretty much napped every day, and I was just exhausted from classes. During the weekends, I still do nap every now. And there's just days where I just feel so tired and I just need to lay down for a little bit. I usually nap between 30 minutes to an hour. I don't want to nap too long. For the most part, anytime you're resting it's going to be good for your HRV and it's going to be good for your recovery.
Mhm. Yeah, because you can get into sleep debt. And I know
Yeah,
this is easier said than done, especially if you have kids or you have other things going on. But if there is a weekend where things are a little more chill, take a nap. It'll help to just kind of like regenerate you. Sometimes, especially since I'm in school, I do have more time. So I'll take like a 30-minute nap before I study, and I feel like it helps me to focus more. So
yeah.
naps are always good, but I would
Hmm.
say, yeah, no more than like 30 minutes to an hour, or else it just kind of messes you. And then you wake up and you're like more disoriented.
That's definitely happened to me before. I'll take like a two. I'm even guilty of taking almost a 3 hour nap before, and I just feel tired. So I
Mhm.
think just a small one's it's perfect.
Right,
Hmm.
definitely.
Yeah,
So, yeah, leading into our next question, we wanted to talk about the importance of like a nighttime routine, a little bit about circadian rhythm, and what we like to do to like wind down before bed, which I feel like we've kind of discussed a little already. But what you
yeah.
got?
Yeah, I mean, we've both kind of talked about what our nighttime routines are. I think it's important to have a nighttime routine because then your body knows what to expect, and it'll help you sort of get better sleep since it knows when your usual bedtime is each night. Like you mentioned earlier, it's good to have the consistent time when you go to bed and really when you wake up. So just finding time to wind down and do things like reading is usually what I do. I know a lot of people like to journal sometimes too, writing things down. Anything that sort of works your brain rather than just looking at a screen is definitely important because you're still actively doing something, and your brain's working, but it's winding down at the same time, and it gets your body into that relaxed sort of mode, which not only leads to good sleep at night but more efficient recovery as well. So and then of course that leads to higher HRV, which is what the pod's about. So yeah, I think just having a routine is a good place to start.
I think consistency is just a huge thing here, and just creating
Yeah,
a space that you actually look forward to. Like blackout curtains is always a must for me. Both of us like to sleep with a box fan, so we're drowning out the noise, we're drowning out the bright lights outside. So that's already creating a nice, cool environment. Because
yeah,
if you're sleeping in a hot room, then your body is just not going to be able to relax and you're just going to be miserable and it's going to take you a lot longer to fall asleep. And like I said, you can acquire sleep debt. So Jake and I try to go to bed when we are together around the same time every night, just so we're on that same routine. I feel like it makes a huge difference if you and your partner are on kind of a similar schedule with that.
yeah,
So then like, if one person is staying up late and the other person goes to bed, like that can be disruptive having people go in and out. So
yeah.
definitely something to consider. I definitely notice if I'm doom scrolling on my phone, the next morning I wake up and I just feel exhausted. It's just really hard to get out of bed. So I really try to emphasize no screens, at least
Yeah,
like 45 minutes. I feel like they say you should do it closer to like an hour or two, but sometimes that
yeah,
can be tough, especially if you're getting home late or whatever it might be. But I actually love to use this app called Opal. I think they do have a feature on your iPhone, but for some reason I just like this app. And you can basically block your apps. So I block them from 9 p.m. to about 11 a.m. So that way I'm just not tempted. It's not even there. Like, I can just set my phone down and like, okay, it's really time for me to take a step away from this. So sometimes you got to do what you got to do. It's unfortunate we live in a world where I have to download an app to block other apps, but it is what it is. And it honestly has helped so much. So anything
Yeah,
you can find to, help your body and mind relax.
the only thing that's funny about it is that actually the other night, Maddie wanted to show me something on Instagram, and it was like 9:01, and she was like, "Hey, I wanted to show you this video on Instagram." She's like, "Oh man, it's already blocked," but I think it's definitely good. But it's just if you know that you really struggle with it, I think it's a great idea, honestly.
Definitely. So I guess to kind of wrap things up here, if listeners could just focus on one thing to improve HRV through sleep, what do you feel like is would be the most beneficial to take away from today?
So I honestly couldn't get it down to one. So I actually got it down to two. I think the first thing that I always think about is just trying to focus on why it might be changing. Like I said, I have the Fitbit, so it tells me my daily readiness score. So I don't have the exact HRV value, but that daily readiness is always very, very helpful. I always try to pay attention, like I said earlier. If one of the days out of the week is low, I try to really think about what I did that day to maybe cause that score to be low. Thinking about, again, what I did in the gym. Did I have a really stressful day at work? What could I do after that to sort of calm my body down? So I think it's important to do that. And then secondly, like we already sort of talked about, is having a nighttime routine that'll positively affect your sleep and recovery. Like I said, for me, it's reading every night. I usually read for about 20 minutes, and that's good enough for me. I start yawning. So that's a perfect amount of time for me. I did a test for 1 week. I just scrolled on my phone before bed and then went to bed. And then the second week, I put my phone down and read my book before bed. And the daily readiness score was totally significantly different. It was way higher when I read before bed. So that data literally proves that it works. So just doing things like that, I think, is always not only interesting, but it definitely sees like what's best for you. And that's definitely what HRV and sleep is about. So finding what's best and consistent for you.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel
Mhm.
like it's good to do little tests on yourself and check things like, okay, I'm going to try this. If it works, great. If
Yeah.
not, let me try another thing. So that was good that you did that little study on yourself or experiment on
Hmm.
yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just honing in on consistency, not perfection. We obviously don't have kids or anything else going on, and I know, a lot of people have other, not, I don't want to say obstacles, but there's other things involved, like getting the kids to bed and all these other things. So if there's, maybe it's one of those things where you try to do like 3 nights out of the week where you're really consistent. Just finding some form of routine, I think, is what the main thing here is. So yeah. Anyways, thanks so much for coming on, Jake, and talking about HRV. I feel like this was very informative for both of us because I feel like
Yeah.
it's something that I keep seeing on social media, but not necessarily something that I truly understood. And so it's good to be aware of, and it's good to kind of continue to build that foundation, especially with you and getting our sleep routine down and all the things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely easier as a team, me and you. So
yeah.
I wouldn't say it's more difficult by yourself, but just to have that motivation between each other, it's definitely made it easier. So thank you
Hmm.
for that.
Yeah, definitely. All right, listeners, we will see you next week. Thanks so much for joining us and have a good rest of your day. Thanks again so much for being here. If you're looking to connect with me on socials, my Instagram is vitalityandmotion_. My YouTube is at vitalityandmotion with two N's at the end. And then my email is vitalityandmotion@gmail.com.